and so I tend to quote a lot of Maya Angelou's poems. But one of the things that she says, and I actually have a book of quotes in my bedroom, and so one of the pages that I keep on my nightstand is a quote that says, "Hope and fear cannot occupy the same space. Invite one to stay."
Welcome to Flourishing Leadership in Tough Times, where we have honest conversations to help you stay rooted with integrity, rise with courage, and lead with hopeful resilience. Hosted by Deborah Owen. Hello, friend. I'm glad that you're here with us again today. Latrina Denson is the Associate Dean of Students and Executive Director for the Office of Community and Belonging at Mount Holyoke College, which just happens to be my alma mater. With nearly 30 years of experience in higher education, she oversees diversity, equity, access, and inclusion initiatives for students at Mount Holyoke. Latrina holds a BS in psychology and a minor in vocal performance, as well as a Master's of Ed in Community Counseling from the University of Louisiana at Monroe. She's also the founder of Reimaging You Consulting. Passionate about social justice, she mentors young women and gender minorities of color, enjoys singing and traveling, and loves spending time with her daughter, Maya Starr. Latrina, thank you so much for being here today. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Thank you for having me. So exciting. Thank
Good,
you.
good. Well, in your roles at Mount Holyoke and in higher education, what's one thing you've learned about how people grow into courageous, values-based leadership, especially in today's climate?
Mm, wow, that's a really good, very good question, very challenging question, particularly
It
right
is.
now. Um, I, was thinking about the one of my favorite people, and you'll think is Maya Angelou, which is why I named my daughter after her. That's her namesake.
Right.
And so I tend to quote a lot of Maya Angelou's poems. But one of the things that she says, and I actually have a book of quotes in my bedroom. And so one of the pages that I keep on my nightstand is a quote that says, "Hope and fear cannot occupy the same space. Invite one to stay." Um, One of the things I read every day before I leave my house and enter my journey here at Mount Holyoke and just life in general. And I say that because, a in order to think about leadership and leadership for other people to grow, learn, feel courageous, feel like they are valued, it has to be a space where people can overcome their fear of messing up so that they can lean into who they want to be and what their values are, because that requires vulnerability. It requires um, courageousness and who you are, right? And what your values are, what do they mean, even if they may or may not align with someone else in the same way. It means being able to do things that are hard, and it means that you're going to be working with other people, particularly at a school like Mount Holyoke, where there's a lot of passion around inclusion, where we're all working together and we're all going to mess up. I always say that people are messy. And that's also the beautiful thing about people, that we're messy. And so we get to learn, we get to grow. So for me, it's trying to find that space, not only for other people, but for myself, where I can say you can be courageous in order to overcome fear. You have to be courageous, and you must lean into that. um, it can be Fear cannot be the dominant thing that keeps you from um, action, from moving forward, because for some people it would be stagnant, particularly in this particular moment. I'm fearful, therefore I'm not going to do anything.
Mhm.
But if you have courage, you're able to lean in more. You know what your values are. You know what your commitment is to yourself and to humanity. And that means that you have to think beyond that every single day,
Mm.
no matter what, and reflect on what that means for you. It means how much, every day I engage with someone. Did I mess up? Oh my gosh, how did I mess up? Let me reflect on that. Let me go back and lean in. Let me try again. And let me try again. And let me try again. Yeah. So.
So many things came to mind as I was listening to you right there, and that last bit in particular, I think of the word grace.
Yeah, yeah.
So we have to, as leaders, it would seem to me that we would need to have grace for ourselves, and as a community, we need to have grace for each other.
Definitely. I actually last week just um led a one of my workshops I'm leading. I'm actually facilitating for our first generation and low income students. We see the little Fearless First Academy on the side right there. Those are for our FGLI students. And one of our sessions is grace and space. Like how do you provide grace and leave room for people to grow as you're also trying to make friends on social media right now in this moment. You know, they're all on Instagram, they're trying to connect with people, they're meeting people all over the world, people from different cultures, different beliefs, different value systems. How are they leaning into that? How are they providing grace for themselves when they mess up? How do they
Yeah.
find grace for others and create space for that to occur?
I
To have
love that
authentic-
idea of increasing space for grace. I
Yeah,
like that a
yeah.
lot. That's a really powerful visual, I think. And uh, it's a way for people to grow into the concept of what grace is. I
Yeah.
also I also I also like what you said about how hope and fear can't exist in the same space, talking about
Mhm,
spaces. And I
mhm.
also I'm wondering if you could for because you used the word several times, would you mind defining the word courage for us in your perspective?
That's a good one. What is courage? Um, Courage is doing something that sometimes for me at least I feel in my stomach like, oh my goodness, I'm getting ready to do something that I really believe is really strong in my belief, and it may how is it going to align with other people? Is it going to hit well? Is it going to hit right? You know what, I'm just going to do it because I know in my heart, in my convictions, in my beliefs, that this is correct. I know that I must try and not stop. I must continue to take action. I must be courageous. Um, the lion, like the Wizard of Oz, right? Be a lion, right? And so I must be
Courage.
courageous. And I love that song. So
Yeah.
right, so be a lion, being able to go beyond your fear, being brave. Um, it also means being vulnerable, like also having courage to also say I'm sorry. Like that
Mm.
takes courage to be, oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Um, I messed up.
That goes
Oh,
back to grace again,
yeah,
right?
it does. Yeah, but that's courage to me. That's
Mhm.
courage. It takes a lot of courage to be like, okay, let me what happened? Why didn't this go the way I wanted it to? Um, what do I need to do to improve? Did I hurt someone in a way that I didn't anticipate hurting them?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, oh that's great. And I know I'm wandering off the script at this point, but this is such a good conversation. I'm wondering what you feel like is the intersection between courage and hope.
Hmm, hmm.
I hadn't thought of that before, but
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, I always, when you think about hope, like hope and fear, right? I think about, for me, I go into liberation when we think about hope. For me, that's how I lean into my hope. My hope is through, it's the thing that we encourage and is part of the vision for my department, but it's more than that. It's really how I live my life through this spiritual way of spirituality. My faith comes um, in that moment. That's how I get into social justice leadership is
Mhm.
through spirituality. I believe you can't, that's just my personal value, that you can't do social justice or be a change agent for social justice without this idea of liberation in order to have a sense of hope that you can do something bigger and better, greater than yourself. There's something out there greater than yourself. So I have to have hope to be able to and have like liberation that I know, even if I can't see it, if I can't touch it, that it exists somewhere, right? And
Okay.
I'm constantly working towards that. And you do have to have courage to look at something and believe it's something that you don't see, right? That's not in front of you right now, but you know and you believe in your heart that it can exist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I think about that, those two intersecting, that's what I think about.
And okay, hope and courage, and the word liberation.
Yes.
Simplifying the word for myself, I think of freedom, right? And so we have
Mhm.
the idea is we have the hope of freedom to be able to be all that we were created to be
Mhm.
to impact and influence other people's lives. So some of that is freedom too, and some of it also is freedom from. So there's,
Freedom
there's the
from,
freedom
yeah, yeah.
from
Mhm.
oppression, freedom from
Mhm.
whatever
Right, right, yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah.
also the freedom to take
To
responsibility.
continue to take responsibility, to keep moving, right,
Yeah.
to act, to not stop.
Right.
It's easy to stop. Um, I'm working with a consortium, a racial equity and justice consortium. The leaders are in Bridgewater State, but I've been working with them since I came to Mount Holyoke, and we work with several colleges and universities in this huge consortium focused on racial equity and justice. And there are some people, we recognize that we're like, do we stop in this moment? And we're like, no, right? We're keeping moving. We can't be stagnant even when it's hard because we do have hope. We do have hope. We know that we can continue to provide equity and access for students of color in higher education in predominantly white institutions. Like that is something that we are hopeful for, no matter what comes around, no matter what the laws say, what
And that's
the
where it takes courage, right?
a lot of courage to be able to do that. It takes
There we
courage,
go.
and so we as the leaders are constantly having to challenge those leaders in these universities and colleges to say, yes, we know it's hard right now. We know.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do? How do we do it in this particular moment? It may shift a little bit in how we do it, but we can't stop. We
Can't
can't
stop.
stop.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Great. Great. Thank you for working
yeah.
through some of that with me because that's
Yeah.
really important stuff that we started out with. Hi, thank you for letting me interrupt this episode for just a moment. Now, if you're listening to this podcast, the chances are you care deeply about leading well, especially in times that feel heavy or uncertain or demanding. One of the convictions behind this podcast is that flourishing leadership doesn't start with strategy. It starts with who you're becoming as a leader, under pressure, in grief or sorrow, in change or transformation. And that's why I've been writing a series of devotional books called The Awaiting for Advent and When Sorrow Speaks for Lent. They're grounded in neuroscience, the personality patterns of the Enneagram, and reflective practice to help you grow in awareness, self honesty, and presence. And while they do follow the rhythms of the church year, they're really for any season when leadership feels costly. They're resources you can return to whenever you want to lead from the inside out. Not just do more or say more, but become more of who you were created to be, more grounded, more whole. So please see the show notes for links to these resources and share them with your friends. Thanks. And now back to this episode. In terms of your role, what does belonging look like, say, in an academic environment, and how do you help foster that, not just for students, but across an entire campus ecosystem, or maybe even across the other networks that you've been referring to? Please.
Yeah, yeah, no, thank you. You think about sense of belonging. So, there's the workable term, and then what does that term really mean, right? So, the workable term is, a person's perceived perception of like their social support, their feelings, their sensation of connected with a community, and feeling accepted and respected and valued. And that goes beyond just students, that goes to all colleagues, the entire community, in every space that we occupy, right? In order to provide a sense of belonging for students, that means that also staff, faculty, everyone has to feel a sense of belonging in the community in order to show that to our students as well, and also in other spaces that occupy, whether it's other organizations that I'm a part of in the community. And so for me, that really does go back to finding spaces where people can be authentically themselves.
Yeah.
Um, and authentically themselves looks different for different people. And how do we not assume that you must act, behave, exist in a certain way in order to thrive and have the same and have access to the same resources that other people have. That's really important for me. Really, I'm from the South, right? I have different experiences. I've lived in various places all over the country as well, and so my experiences are going to be different than even a Black person here in New England. Our experiences are going to be completely different. But yet, how do I find a sense of connectedness with those folks, even if it's not in Mount Holyoke, but outside? How do we find where we feel like, oh, there's commonality? Oh, I can be, and then also, even if there's not commonality in every way, I can still be who I am. And that's what makes it great.
So
That's what,
belonging it goes more than just that, the kind of sense of belonging. It's connection, is what you're
yes,
saying.
definitely connection so that you feel that, right? You should feel that you can be here and I can just breathe. I'm at the Betty Shabbat Cultural Center right now, one of my favorite spaces because I can be here and just breathe and be myself here, right? Like there's artwork, there's you can't see in the background, but because I have my other beautiful background here, but there's like pictures, the picture right here in the right of a Black woman braiding another daughter's hair that actually a student made. And so we have that image here, right? Like those are things that represents my hair, right? And so do I find spaces throughout the community, throughout the campus that looks like me? Are
Mhm.
there multiple spaces that look like me? That's really important, kind of those like our environmental um, um, micro affirmations, right? Those spaces that we
Right.
look.
Micro affirmations. I like that
Yeah,
word. Micro.
yeah, yeah, micro affirmations, right? That
Yeah.
affirm my identity, affirm who I am. Like I belong here, not because I'm just like, but because I'm who I am.
So let me ask you to dive into that just a little bit. You said my identity, and oh my gosh, we've got so much going on with identity politics right
Mhm,
now. Ugh, and it's
mhm,
ugly in a lot of senses. But in a positive sense, what does it mean to have individual identities and still belong and find that connectedness as a community?
hmm. So what does it mean to have different like individual identities?
Yeah, because we have different identities.
Mhm.
um, yours is going to be different from mine, which is even different from
Right.
my own husband's, and which is different
Mhm.
from my children because of where we grew up and who surrounded us as we were growing up. Did they look like us? Did they not look like us? Did they think like us? Just as an example, we raised our children in a small little place in small exurbia type of place in central Massachusetts, and then our youngest son went off to New York City, and he did fine growing up in little tiny town of central Massachusetts.
Mhm.
But when he went to New York, he found his people
Mhm. Mhm.
because he went to this particular university and he found his people. So there's some identity as well as community and belonging. So I just talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, like where do you find your folks? Like how do you navigate that or how do you even find us as a community
Yeah,
within people from different identities who are coming together?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, I think there's still because there's room for this sense of what are the common threads, that connect us. And maybe through you and I were talking about music, right? So we don't, we have different identities, but music brings us
Right.
together. You talked about your work and I've sung in classical choral,
Mhm.
courses throughout my life, so I can connect with that, and that can
Right.
resonate with me in ways that people may be surprised about, right? Like how I show up, or that like I said, I grew up around gospel music, but yet I also love Broadway, and so, or my daughter who grew up with me, who loves Broadway also because she's my kid. But then one day she was listening to some um, some goth music, and I thought, so, what is going on? What are you listening to? You know, she's like, Mom, what do you mean? I'm okay. You know, I'm like, are you okay? She's like, yeah. What's your problem? You know, I'm like, right. So, but we still have commonality when we do come together, even though she has different experiences as well. And so I think those are the things I think that we think about, why did we come at this place? I believe that people are, I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that people come together at certain places, certain times for a certain reason, that you're supposed to be there for this particular reason. And everything that you can say that I lived through this, like, sense of something else bigger and greater than me. And so, with that said, why are we together? What's our purpose for coming here? Why are all these people coming together from all over at a school like Mount Holyoke, where there are differences, with even
Yeah.
differences within communities, to what you said, like you and your son, right? There's differences within a community as well. But when we come together, we can we can be whole. We can sing as one voice in some way, but we also can value the many differences that
Yes,
exist.
yes, yes. I think of Dan Siegel, who always says that the concept of in integration is when different elements come together and retain their differences, but they come together to create a new whole. So
Yeah, yeah.
that integration is what we're talking about, I think.
Yeah, like you're not changing who you are. You
Mhm.
just blend. You're
And
coming
it
together.
also reminds me of a certain candidate a year ago who talked a lot about how there's more that we have in common than that separates us.
Hmm.
To look
Hmm.
for those
Hmm.
commonalities. They help us feel like we belong
Yeah,
and are connected.
yeah.
And the whole purpose of this is in our belonging together, but in an open way, I think, is
Mhm.
how we then flourish even in tough times because we have each
Yeah,
other.
yeah, because we have each other, because we know of our commonalities, we know our common goals, and then we value the differences. Like we said, I mean, it would be so boring if we were all exactly alike.
It would, wouldn't it?
It would be so boring. Like, why would you want every single person to be exactly like you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's great. That's great.
yeah.
Well, let me change the topic just a little bit and talk a little bit more about the students. What gives you hope as you watch this generation of students step into leadership? I know you watch them come in as first year students, and then they kind of grow. Many of them may go away for their junior year and have whole new experiences, and then they bring it back to Mount Holyoke and they share with their community. I mean, there are analogies that we could have for various aspects of our own lifetimes that illustrate the same kind of thing. But just in your microcosm, what gives you hope for the young as you watch the young leaders grow in at Mount Holyoke?
Oh my goodness. I think about, I'm one of those sappy emotional people. So, and I love bringing back younger alum who were here when I started working here, and bringing them back to share their wisdom with students,
Yeah.
to their experiences. And I will tell you, every single time one of them comes and they talk, or they do something, they give a speech, or I cry. And, and I cry because I'm amazed at their talent, which isn't surprising, but I also just recognize what our future looks like, right? Like, I tell them all the time. When I first started working here, I used to tell them, and I still really this, I would say, you all are, I'm working here for you all, but selfishly, I'm working here for me too, because you're going to be the leaders. They're going to make decisions for my child. And so I am investing in you, that you're able to give back
Mm-hmm.
to the
Mm-hmm.
next generation. And that has happened. And watching that, just, gives me such hope. Also, I was thinking about, when, unfortunately, the many letters from the Department of Education, that were coming down, that was really, in decreasing the diversity and inclusion initiatives in higher education, and saying what they expect us to and not do, et cetera. Um, and the letters kept coming, and I remember I was getting ready to go a few days later to my daughter. My daughter just completed her freshman year at Spelman College. And so I was getting ready to go see her, but I got this next letter as I'm prepping for some programs um, for students, for identity-based student groups for their senior ceremonies. And I got this letter saying, you can't do this, you can't do that, and et cetera. And I literally sunk. I was so emotional because I'm trying to provide something for to celebrate these students who have achieved so much, and someone's telling me that I can't, right?
Mhm.
And then I went to Atlanta, hung out with met some my daughter's friends and some of her peers also at Morehouse, and I saw these Black and brown kids who had, out of all the things that are happening in this moment, they were talking about their dreams and what they're going to be achieving. And there were a couple of kids who they were like 16 years old and they were freshmen in college, right? And so
Wow.
these are brilliant, right? Brilliant kids. They're not kids, brilliant young people. And I was so emotional. I said, I'm getting emotional thinking about it because I was in such despair. And then I thought, wow, but these students are going. They're like, this is what I'm gonna do when I leave. This is how I'm gonna contribute to the world. I'm gonna be this scientist. I'm gonna be this, this lawyer, attorney. They had all these great aspirations. And then I came back to Mount Holyoke and I saw the eyes and the same glimpses in the students that I see every day. And it just clicked. It was just like
Yeah.
yeah, why am I in such despair? These kids are going to change the world, and so I have to remember that in everything I do. So that's what gives me hope a lot. Like I get
That's
emotional
great.
thinking about it all the
That's
time.
great.
Yeah.
That's great. I love that. So this question is somewhat related to that one, and that is, um, how have you personally stayed grounded and resilient while doing work that's often emotionally complex?
Yeah, yeah. Um, I often, particularly if I know I'm going to have a rough day before I get out of bed, I actually say a prayer. So
Lovely.
that really was the first thing I do.
Yeah.
I have stopped. I used to watch the news when I woke up every single morning. I don't do that anymore. I listen to some comedy, like a comedy radio show that also may
Okay.
give me a little bit of what's going on in the world, but then also um, give me some other laughs, right, in the world. And then it's in pop culture because I love a little pop culture. I um, I actually have gotten back to my exercising. It's very, very important. It helps me, give me my internal, natural endorphins to help navigate any type of stress I may be coping with. Depression, just did a good run this morning. I'm feeling good right now. And News Rock, and I have the podcast, right? And so it's important that I find I first moved here, I found a place of worship that was really important to me as I continue to also ensure that students here have places where they can observe if they choose to any faith or
Mhm.
religion that they observe. And so that's important for me also to be a role model and what that means.
Mhm.
Yeah, walking my dogs, just doing the things, so I really I try to stay aware of what's going on, but not where it really absorbs every single thing I do, right? I usually try to use my weekends to catch up on a lot of additional news. Um, and then I also, this is funny, but I do record The View, and I watch the first 15 minutes of The View every morning when I get back. So before I go
Great.
to bed, I love The View. Yeah, that's my thing too. So a lot of
Great.
little things. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, just general ways of general practices of well-being,
Yes,
body,
definitely.
mind, and
That's really
spirit.
in spirit. Exactly. That's my
Yeah.
hashtag. So mental, physical, spiritual fitness is my hashtag I use all the time. That really is the key that I have to. And I can tell when I'm not doing that
Mhm.
too, when I start unraveling,
Yeah.
I also breathe. I always tell people I need to stop and breathe.
Yeah.
Stop and breathe. Do I have breath? I try not to when things where we're doing a lot there's oh, we're having to be reactionary because these things are coming down. I actually have to be let me be calm and let me not just I really try to do like a very like, okay, let me breathe, let me stay calm and making the decisions. I can't let this overwhelm me. I really have really practiced that a lot. There are a lot of people who have gone into the hospital. I know even this past year, people who have passed away in my life who, because of stress, of
Yeah.
navigating, trying to
Yeah.
find that sense of resilience in everything that's going on. So finding that balance is really, really important to me. I
It
just try
is. It
that.
is.
Yeah.
And you know, you talk about breathing. I mean, I have a couple of books about breath on my shelf, and it is so important. It's how our parasympathetic nervous system calms down everything else and reduces the adrenaline. And it's that
Mhm.
constant adrenaline and cortisol that causes detrimental stress to our
Mhm.
bodies.
Yeah, yeah. So I really have. That's really it's something I'm constantly thinking about on a
Yeah.
regular basis. And how do I remember to do that?
Yeah.
It's not going to help if I'm doing the work if I'm not, here, right? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but okay, yeah.
Yeah, and that I'm sure that's something useful for students, you know, that they're going to be like, why do I need to do that? But I'm sure that that's a useful strategy and a
I
tool
tell them
for,
all the time, yeah, and they realize that in rest, right? Rest is a form of resistance, and how do we encourage rest, even when we're going 100 miles an hour. And I know my students will always say the truth is everywhere. She's always busy. She's always doing X, Y, Z. I do find my rest, and I think they don't know that, and because of how I navigate my life. And when I see myself not getting rest, my body tells me. Sometimes I can go, 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 but my body will tell me, and I
yeah,
will have to pause before it gets to a certain point. And I don't want it to get to that certain point. So listening to my body and breathing constantly is really important, and stopping and closing my door, right? Reading I have some things on the wall, some quotes on the wall that I read, my
right.
serenity prayer that I read every day. And my desk just sits on my right by my computer that I look at and close my door and read. So
That's great. That's great.
yeah.
Do you have a story that you could share from when, either from where you at Mount Holyoke now or from some other time, when leadership required both compassion and courage simultaneously?
Mm, I feel like that's every day.
Either yeah, every day, okay. Either for yourself or in other people that you've observed
And no,
some.
I feel like it's every day. I'll try to think about it for Mount Holyoke. Um, I would say for Mount Holyoke, when the 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 conflict with Hamas and Israel started, we were that was the semester we were going to start back our interfaith weeks on campus, as we haven't had one in a few years, and people were nervous about doing that. People were
Mhm.
really nervous about having interfaith week. Um, Including many of my colleagues who were just really like, how do I lean in this? I'm also feeling vulnerable. I'm also hurt, right? It's right. Like, when it's your identities that are connected, and how do you engage and be with other communities at this time when you're also feeling harmed and you kind of want to be with your own community, as we talk about
Right,
those intersections. But it's
right,
also given nature to gravitate to the people whom you have the most commonality with, or
right.
people that are connected to you than others, your most salient identities. That's normal, right?
Mhm.
And so, but yet, if we're going to really focus on interfaith work, this is the time to do it more than ever before. And so we went on and did it, and we did an interfaith spiritual dinner that had a great turnout. It was we had our programs. And they went, well, people were nervous about people showing up. How are we going to enter this? Are they going to, they went phenomenal. Myself and I had two peer educators that I worked with. We created also a workshop on being allies for marginalized religions.
Mm,
That we were nervous, people like, oh, people in the come. We had like at least 20 people there, that took a lot of courage. I'm going to tell you, we were like, as we're creating this curriculum, and me, encouraging to student leaders to be in community with me to create this workshop for the community. Um, and it went well. And then that was what, 2 years ago, because then last year we just had Interfaith Week and it was even 10 times better, right? And
Yeah.
so because
Yeah.
right, but that was a time where it was like, oh, maybe we should cancel these. Maybe we shouldn't do these programs. And
That
then
was definitely a time for courage with compassion. I love that.
yes, yes, definitely a time. That there was a lot of courage. I'm gonna tell you, I had like all the butterflies and all of the like things going on, but I was just like, but no, I can't not do this. I just knew I could not with conviction. As a leader, I had to lead my colleagues and my students through a difficult time to move us along and say we still have an obligation to do this for this campus.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And so that kind of leads to my next question. So over these last few years of social unrest, pandemic shifts, national polarization, what have you learned about leadership through all this uncertainty for yourself or for the students that you're leading?
yeah. Um, Leadership isn't a one fit all.
Mm.
It changes based on the needs, So, servant leadership is the key. And then sometimes, but you also have to be a strategist, which means that sometimes you may have to make decisions that initially everyone may not like, and you have to see the vision for the future. Um, And also you have to be a servant leader as well and make sure that other people are part of that process. So it's a both and, which is
Yeah.
really hard and it's a balance.
Yeah.
And you have to determine when you're going to shift one or the other, when is the pendulum going to shift. Um, those are some of the things I've initially learned. I'm excited about watching, and I was thinking about this, I'm watching Dr. Beverly Tatum when she was our interim president, how she led. And before she left, I just, told her I really admired how she makes decisions, right? And she talked about, like that fact that sometimes people may not like everything. And also, how do you also continue to um, feel other people, right? So you continue to like invest in community, invest in people, invest in community, invest in people constantly, so that when those difficult times do emerge, they trust you in some way. They may not
Yes.
fully trust you, but there's some sense of trust. But you have to find time to build that community. You have to find time, and sometimes it's hard if you jump right in. Sometimes we have to, as leaders, that community isn't developed, and that's when that trust is there. And I know that I've been in those experiences as well. And I know that when you take time and you constantly invest and you pour in, it makes those decisions a little bit easier.
I
Um,
want to follow up on that thread because I think it's so important. And that is the servant leadership, which
mhm.
requires investing and pouring into the people whom you are responsible for leading in one way or another. That's what
Yes,
builds trust so that when times are tough, people trust you enough to lead them in a direction that is in their best interests
yes,
overall.
yes, exactly. And that's hard. That does take courage, right? It takes a lot of
Mm.
to be like, okay, we're gonna do this, and people are like, and I'm like, okay, you haven't led me wrong so far, or you've invested in me enough to be like, okay, let
Yeah,
me.
you got to lay the foundation
Yeah,
first,
yeah,
and that
yeah.
takes time.
It does. Takes time with college, takes time with students. I remember I was working with my very, very first year here. We were working with some students in our career community, and there were some challenges within the community. And I really was trying to continue to build coalition. Coalition building is really the key for me that I
Mhm.
started here, helping students understand coalition building. And I remember this one student of color who was getting ready to graduate and said, I may not be able to do this right now. I'm going to pull back because I trust what you're going to do for the other students who are going to be taking my space, right? So but that took time building that relationship for that person to say,
Yeah.
I may still be there. I'm going to step back and let this happen because I trust what you're doing. It's just that I can't be in this space, and that gave room for that. And
That was courageous of that
of them,
person.
right? Courageous of
Yeah.
them too, right? Right, to be able
Yeah.
to do that and they say, okay, but that same student, I remember when I first came here, that very first week or two came in, it was like, we're gonna petition. So they said they were gonna give me a petition on something, and I was like, can you can I talk to you about this first?
Can we have like a relationship before you start
I
demanding things?
petitioning, what's going on? I'm just trying to organize my office. So,
Yeah.
so the move to, the end of the year, say hey, I don't fully I'm not gonna be able to do this, but I trust that you're able to lead the younger students, as they move into their leadership roles, right?
Yeah.
That took time to build that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Latrina, as we start to wind down here, is there something that you would tell your younger self, if you could, in terms of um, leadership or how to flourish? Any of those kind of topics that we've been either something
um,
we've said already or something that we've skirted around or haven't gotten to?
yeah, no. I think not really. I mean, I would just my younger self, I would just say just be you. I never, when I was younger, I never thought I'd be working at a college. This wasn't my initial interest. Um, but I knew that my role was somehow to impact as many people as possible in whatever way that I could, and whatever tools that God gave me to do that, right? To do that. Initially, I thought it was music, and so, but I knew that I was supposed to somehow impact so many people's lives, right? And so so my journey has shifted because I've also left room for wherever I'm supposed to be, to happen. Where I had goals and dreams and still do, but those dreams may look different, but they're still here. Um,
Because
and
you're still you.
yes, because I'm still me, because I'm me. I'm authentically myself, and I'm not trying to be something that I'm not. I'm going with wherever I am supposed to be, you know, at this particular moment. At this particular moment, I'm supposed to be here at Mount Holyoke College. I came to this campus, I visited many campuses. I looked over, I said, this is where I'm supposed to be. I literally told the person I was sitting at that time, like, I'm supposed to have this job. This is where I'm supposed to be. Right. And so,
That's a powerful statement
yeah,
when you
yeah.
when you're there for an interview.
Mhm. No, it's true. That's where I'm supposed to. I don't say that either. I just kind
Yeah.
of, I had other people calling. I would call Renee Davis, say, "Hey, like just checking," And then she finally offered. She said, "I know you've been waiting. Yes, I have."
And just for our viewers, if you're listening to this as an audio podcast, you can't see it, but if you're watching this on YouTube, the background that Latrina has is one of the pretty corners of the campus there.
Gorgeous,
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely gorgeous.
yeah.
Yes.
So if listeners take nothing else away from this conversation, what's the one key thing you really hope they walk out with?
Be courageous.
Be courageous.
It may be hard, but it's worth it.
Hard but worth it. That's great. Thank you. And how can people reach you if they would like to find out more about you, your work, or Mount Holyoke, or anything else there?
Yeah, you can reach me at Denson at mountholyoke.edu. Or my full name, my Gmail, just Latrina Denson at gmail.com, particularly around my Reimagining You, if you're looking for someone to come and facilitate dialogues, provide workshops or anything like that. I'm also available. I do some
Go ahead and
consulting.
tell us about reimagining you. What exactly is that?
Yeah, yeah, it really is like reimagining who you are, right? So, what does it look like? And really focusing on providing workshops and dialogues for like initially I started out as focused on like gender minorities of color during the pandemic. However, it's emerged and it's really about intersectional conversations. I've done workshops on privilege, on strategic planning to for equity inclusion in different colleges and universities. So whatever you need, mentorship and support on making change, being change agents.
Great. I'll
Yeah.
include that link in
Yeah.
the show notes as well. So
Yeah.
that would be great. That would be great. All right. Well, Latrina, this has been a pleasure. I'm so glad that we had a chance to talk, and I'm glad that you're doing such good work at the place that I love so much at Mount
Thank you for
Holyoke.
inviting me. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
it's
Yeah, we
been
love
great.
Molly. Yeah.
That's great. All right. Well, thank you all, and let's show up at the next podcast episode as well. We'll see what that is when we get there. And thank you for being in our audience. Thanks, Latrina.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me on Flourishing Leadership in Tough Times. If you found today's conversation meaningful, please like and share this episode and subscribe for more honest, inspiring stories to help you stay rooted with integrity, rise with courage, and lead with hopeful resilience. If you have thoughts or questions, or you're interested in finding out about coaching, spiritual direction, or retreat leadership, I'd love to hear from you. Please reach out through Substack or find my website at insideoutministries.info. I'm Deborah Owen, and I'll see you next time.